Hey guys, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam, and in today's video I have an insight that I'd like to share, which arose during meditation a couple of days ago. And it's this idea that the moment we are in duality, the moment that the egoic mind has become our sense of identity or has hijacked our sense of identity, the moment we split ourselves into subject and object, we are essentially trapped in a double bind. A double bind, in case you're not familiar with the term, is a kind of lose-lose situation. It's a sort of damned if you will, damned if you don't type of situation. And this is the kind of dilemma that we find ourselves trapped in the moment we are split into subject and object. Before I dive straight into the video, I want to give a quick shout out to all the people who have purchased the $7 basic embodiment course. I was very pleased to see the response, which is still going since last week. And if you guys are interested, the details are in the video description. And so back to the main topic, right? What we're essentially saying here is that the moment we split ourselves into subject and object, and the subject becomes this egoic individualistic self, we are in a lose-lose situation regardless of how we play it in life. I have very often been haunted by the notion that there is a right way in which to play the game of life, that there is a right way in which I can tactically maneuver, acquiring the right information, partnering up with the right people, or becoming spiritual with the right method type of thing, and that if only you play it right, that you can win in the game of life. And what I'm saying in this video is that so long as you're trying to do that, and so long as you're trying to do that as a separate individual self, there is no way to win. You are in a lose-lose situation. You're in a double bind created by the subject-object split that was created or that arose very, very early on in our initial months of development. A quick word on how that split arises in case you have not been following the channel previously. The split of subject and object arises through the contact with our primary caregiver, which is usually our mother. I've often said that mother is the first other, and that it has been demonstrated that the mother's loving gaze is what starts to create in the mind a separation in which the mother is identified as the other. She's the first other, and that creates a separate sense of self. So there is suddenly self and other, and that creates a split in what is otherwise a completely unified mind. Once that split is created, the mind longs for unification. It longs for unity and wholeness, or holiness, and healing. And what the mind doesn't know, once it has become split and what it has identified itself with the egoic individuality, is that whatever is pursued through that egoic individuality in an attempt to acquire, in an attempt to win, in an attempt to appease our desires, is a rigged game. It cannot satisfy. And the reason it can't satisfy is because whatever requires acquisition implies separation. If we were one with the object of our desire, there would be no need to acquire it because it's already a fundamental part of us. Because we can't feel that it is a fundamental part of us, there arises a fear of being separate away from it, and in parallel, a desire to acquire it from the external world, or from the apparently external world. And therefore, the game is rigged in the sense that it doesn't matter if we take the right action or not. It doesn't matter if our action results in us acquiring the object of our desire or never managing to acquire the object of our desire, because so long as we either acquire it or lose it, it is still an object that is separate from us. And this is the big joke of it all, is the ego's constant attempt at feeling fulfilled and complete and unified, or feeling that sense of unity that it longs for, or that we long for. And all its attempts are doomed to failure regardless of whether we achieve our objectives or not. And I want to make a quick caveat here, as usual, because out of the woodwork crawl people saying like, oh, do you mean that we shouldn't pursue goals? And, what if you're wrong about, the ego being the enemy or whatever? And I want to make sure that we do not characterize this as we should not go out there and pursue things. So on a practical level, you're always better off taking pragmatic decisions that are effective, decisions that help you achieve your goals so that your basic needs are covered for, so that you have fulfillment in the kind of work that you do, in the relationships that you create for yourself. Right? So this is not against that. What this is a kind of an attempt to raise our awareness, in the sense that the activity of desire and the actions that follow desire are actions meant to help us change a situation in the objective world, in the external world, an action that is geared at acquiring a new situation in life, acquiring new objects, acquiring new circumstances, acquiring the company of certain people, or acquiring certain knowledge or certain states of mind, even spiritual states of mind. Okay, so it's all about this acquisition. And that acquisition implies the subject and object divide. And not only implies it, but it solidifies that sense of division, and therefore pushes our sense of unity further, as opposed to getting it closer by. In many of the sessions that I do with people, I aim at trying to find the essence of the double bind that has been created in the mind by a sense of incompleteness. That double bind can take many, many practical forms. One form that it could take could be, for example, I have been with my partner for a very, very long time, and therefore I feel the safety and coziness of being with that person, but my soul also longs for the freedom of going out there in the world and perhaps finding out what it's like to date other people or live in a foreign country, which I've never had the freedom to do, right? So that's a double bind. Is whichever you choose, you're missing out on the other element. Another double bind could be I have a day job, and that day job gives me financial security, and it makes me feel like I'm achieving goals and providing for my family. And at the same time, I long for the freedom to create my own little sustainable startup, which might put me in financial distress, but which is more fulfilling from a sort of bigger life goal type of situation, right? I have a sense of safety in my overprotective mother, but I know that it's stopping me from going out there and choosing the career that I want. I could go on and on about these. The fundamental split that we're trying to reconcile, which cannot be reconciled no matter what activity or challenge we take on the outside world and how that pans out, is one between safety and freedom. And no matter what we do, no matter how we play it in the external world, safety and freedom will always be in conflict so long as the object-subject duality is in place. We cannot have our cake and eat it too, as long as we don't realize that we are the cake. That's the big solution to the entire thing, of course. If you want to have your cake and eat it too, you have to realize you're the cake. But you cannot realize you're the cake so long as you desire the cake. And desire pushes the cake desire for the cake pushes the realization of being the cake further and further out. So how do we get around this, right? How do we achieve that unity? Well, I've mentioned many of the methods. The embodiment course that I mentioned at the start of the video is one of the royal roads into realizing that you are the cake, into realizing that unification that resolves the subject-object split, and that helps you get to a place where the essence of safety and the essence of freedom are not mutually exclusive. You don't have to compromise between the two in the way that you typically do when you are having to choose between your partner and the freedom to date whoever you want, or whenever you have to choose between these impossible dilemmas that life creates on and on and on and on. Life in duality is by definition a dilemma. Duality implies dilemma. And you cannot get around that so long as you're split. It's impossible to do. You will be assailed by dilemmas on an ongoing basis until the day you get to your grave. There's no way around that in subject and object duality. So that if you want to resolve the dilemma of life, or all the dilemmas of life, you have to let go of duality. You have to come to unity, in which apparent dilemmas resolve themselves. One practical way to do this that I've been adopting as of late in a very intense kind of way is to use desire to find the fear inside that needs to be reconciled and resolved, so that that dualistic split, the dualistic self, is resolved. So I'll give an example of this. Let's pick something practical, such as okay, so I have a dilemma, for example, about whether I should at some point return to my home country or not, right? And the dilemma arises and says, well, I have a life in the Netherlands, and that life provides me with a lot of good friendships. I have a great career, good income. I'm building a channel, and I'm doing all these kind of things. And there's a lot of safety. But the weather here is not quite what I like it to be. And my mother and my old friends reside in Guatemala. And the dilemma is, should I at some point return back home? Now, that's a dilemma. It's a strong dilemma. It has enough of an emotional charge to make it relevant and make emotions flare up. Now, I could try to resolve that by making lists of pros and cons. I could mull over it and chew on it for days and weeks on end, and I could do the typical mental spinning of the wheels to try to get around this and try to figure out what is the right decision for me. Right? Now, that would be the normal way of doing this. But the more difficult route, and the one where I don't even know how this pans out, by the way, is to say, oh, hang on a second. Here's a dilemma, and it has an emotional charge. And I feel the desire for resolution of this. And Guatemala and the home country represents coziness. It represents, the sense of familiarity, safety, and all those kind of things. It comes with big question marks on its own, but that's one prong. And the Netherlands represents for me freedom and the ability to do whatever I want and claim my independence, apparently, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I want to now find out the self that is split between these two. And I want to find out the core of the conflict between freedom and coziness that seems to be split between these two prongs. There is a self that is split, or there is rather two selves. One promulgating one prong and the other self promulgating the other prong. And these two selves, they go all the way down to the root of the reconciliation between freedom and safety. So I want to follow them down there. I want to trace them back and get to the core fear that I feel having to choose between one and the other. And I want to resolve that core fear, out of which the desire to choose between two places where to live is springing out. That dilemma is the face of duality. And I want to come to unity by tracing the dilemma back to the core fear, the core lack of essential freedom and essential safety that I feel within. So those two essences are felt to be missing inside, and I want to go within and I want to find the essence of that lack. And in finding the essence of that lack, I get to resolve this on a completely different level. I don't know which way this pans out on a practical level, but I know one thing for sure, and it is that to choose on the basis of rationality and emotionality and try to make lists and go back and forth between these two is an absolute nightmare. And I want to let go of the dilemma on that level because it's exhausting, and I don't want this anymore. I don't want to play that game of the mind. I know better than that, and yet I'm caught in it. Right? Full disclosure, right? So these are the dilemmas that we're caught in. The question is, how do we dance with them? Can we use them to resolve something that is much more profound? And having resolved that, be completely free of staying or going, and to do so with gusto, to do so with the full sense of freedom and coziness, regardless of the choice that we make, because we have conquered the essence of freedom and coziness within, so that whatever we do is not a seeking activity to try to acquire that, and is no longer coming from duality. We have broken through the double bind. We have unified within, and therefore we are not playing the dualistic game, which is a lose-lose game no matter what we choose. So that is the essence of the insight that I wanted to share with you guys. And as usual, I'm very curious to hear what you think. So do share it in the comments section. And if you think that these videos are handy in the information that they provide and that others would benefit from it, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the content more available to others out there. And it's also super motivating to me. I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And until then, cheerio. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.